the rich man died, but he had lived sumptuously, and Lazarus was a poor beggar outside his place. While the rich man was feasting, Lazarus was outside starving. He was just hoping to get a few crumbs. Now when he died, a judgment took place. The eternal God assigned both of them to their holding place. Whatever you want to call it. Some call it paradise. You might even call it hell, for all I care. Simply because people are doing this kind of a nonsense. Some go to heaven, some go to hell. Okay? But it was a holding place. And this holding place in Lazarus, in Luke 16, was divided into two parts. A place of comfort and a place of torment. Abraham was in the place of comfort, and the rich man went to the place of torment. And the rich man could see that the beggar, Lazarus, was also in the place of comfort. And that is the holding place for all spirit. Not purgatory. It's too late now to go and take any action. No need to spend your money on masses and saying rosaries and all these other prayers that go on. We don't want to go down there, but you know what I mean. It's too late. This person should have made the changes while they were alive. But as I keep saying, you have never been to a funeral and heard some wicked person being consigned to hell. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen that way. Well, anyway, the point is that they were in this holding place, not heaven. And the rich man said, well, send Lazarus back to tell my family what's going on here. I don't want them to end up here. And Abraham told him, no, they've got the prophets. God's people are there telling them what to do. They should listen to them. They've got his word. He said, they've got Moses. Moses was already dead, but of course the books that Moses wrote were there. So God was not going to let anybody else come and tell the people when he's already got people doing that. So if they have ears to hear, they should hear. So that deals with Lazarus and the rich man. Okay, so that's their holding place. And at resurrection time, these people, the holy righteous people, like Abraham, like Lazarus, will be resurrected. So that's why the funerals are so confused, you see. Why? What's going on here? What's going on here? And you really don't understand what's going on. Well, what's going to happen is Christ is going to return to the Mount of Olives. I said in the first verse, John 14:3, he said, I will come again. And Zechariah 14:1 says, behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. And Zechariah 14:5, and his feet shall stand in that day. A time yet future. It was yet future when Zechariah wrote, and it is still yet future. And his feet shall stand in that day upon the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall cleave in the midst thereof, so it will spread apart toward the east and toward the west. And then there shall be a great valley, and half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. So they're going to do that, and you end up with a valley in the middle. You see, Christ ascended to heaven. We need to be clear about that. But because he ascended to heaven, that doesn't mean we are going to heaven. You know, Acts 1:11 says, when the Christ had just ascended, the disciples, the apostles were there saying, wow, you know. And this angel turns up and says, ye men of Galilee, why stand ye gazing up into the heaven? This same Jesus which is taken up from heaven, up from you into heaven, shall so come in like manner as ye have seen him go. So the angel confirms that Christ had gone to heaven. And the next verse, verse 12, says, that's Acts 1, then returned they unto Jerusalem from the mount called Olivet, which is from Jerusalem a Sabbath day's journey. So we know precisely where Christ ascended from. And we know precisely where he's going to come back to. He's coming back, put his feet straight on the Mount of Olives. We're then told that the meek shall inherit the earth. Somebody said a couple of days ago that, but the meek are in charge of the earth. Well, I am very sorry to hear that the meek are in charge of the earth, because if the people who are in charge of the earth in the political sphere, in the church sphere, in the business sphere, well then we are all doomed, because we are living in a total nightmare. But it says the meek shall inherit the earth, and shall delight themselves in the abundance of peace. Now if you're a believer, you might know that verse. Do you know where that comes from? Well, that particular verse comes from Psalms. Psalms 37:11. Yes, you might have thought it was Matthew 5:5, which says, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. The point I'm making is that whether you're referring to the Old Testament or the New Testament, the message is the same. The meek shall inherit the earth. You know, we've got a document called the man-child, the woman, and the remnant. You really need to read it to understand what is going on. Because there is Christ and his bride, his man-child bride, and they are going to rule the earth. They are going to rule the earth with a rod of iron for 1,000 years. And that is before the new heavens and new earth are created. That's Revelation 26. Blessed and holy is he that hath part in the first resurrection. On such the second death hath no power, but they shall be priests of God and of Christ, and shall reign with him 1,000 years. Now we talked about a rod of iron. And immediately we talk about ruling with a rod of iron, we think of Christ. That is absolutely correct. And you'll find that in Psalm 2, starting in verse 7. It says, I will declare the decree the Lord hath said unto me, Thou art my son, this day have I begotten thee. Psalm 2 verse 8, Ask of me, and I shall give thee the heathen for thine inheritance, and the uttermost parts of the earth for thy possession. Your possession isn't in heaven. It says the uttermost part of the earth for thy possession. Psalm 2 verse 9, Thou shalt break them with a rod of iron. Thou shalt dash them in pieces like a potter's vessel. Be wise now, therefore, O ye kings. Be instructed. Who? Ye judges of the earth. So the kingdom of heaven does not mean that the kingdom is in heaven. The kingdom of heaven is not in heaven. PJ's kitchen is not in PJ, is it? Neither is PJ's kitchen literally limited to what takes place inside my kitchen. The website and the YouTube videos are seen all over the world. There are statistics to prove this if you doubt this.